All right, guys, welcome to Miraculous Mamas. I have an amazing woman here with me today who's going to shed some light on Autism Awareness Month, which is something that a lot of people don't know about, yet it affects so many. And I have Megan Carranza here with me. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Liz.
Yes.
So fun.
I know. This is fun. We're actually at my house drinking wine, hanging out. So it's nice to do a podcast in person. It makes such a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, she had reached out to me because she has a son with autism, and is a huge advocate for it, which is awesome. Because like I said, a lot of people don't know a lot, and I'm in that category of a lot of people that don't know a lot.
I mean, it's honestly like even experts still don't know a lot. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of gray area with autism. And I think that, especially with autism awareness, there's a lot of people that they think that we know what autism is, so that's enough. But there's so much more to it than just knowing that there's a word called autism and what that means. There's so much more of like what that encompasses. So I'm so excited to talk about it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I am a mama to 3. My son Logan is 6. He's my oldest. And then I have Liliana is 3 and Layla is going to be 1 next month. They're all
fun.
L's. That was like not planned, but whenever I say it, I feel like such a dork. But yeah, so they're incredible. And Logan obviously was my first, and we never expected to have a child with autism. It was something that really surprised us. I will say though, from the time that he was pretty little, like I would say around a year, was when I kind of started to notice some signs of things that were concerning to us, mainly pertaining to his speech. And autism is a social communication disorder. So it's something that really affects the way that you communicate and the way that you act, like interact socially.
Yeah.
So for him, especially, his speech was just like really lagging. And we got him into early intervention, which we live obviously in Chicago, Chicagoland area. But most states have an early intervention program. So that's going to go until age 3. So if anybody listening has concerns about their child, if they're noticing some red flags, that's something that you want to get on quickly, because early intervention it's provided through the state. It's on a sliding scale. Yeah. It's very affordable. You basically pay off your income. So it's very affordable, and they provide therapy usually in home for a whole array of special needs. But with autism, and especially at that time, we didn't know that he had autism. We were doing speech and then occupational therapy. So we started that even before he turned 2. So he was doing speech and occupational therapy in home, and he was doing really well, but we were still not getting to where we wanted to be with him. And he was getting closer to his 3rd birthday to age out of the program. Yeah. And then they are in the district. So once your child ages out of early intervention, then you go to the district, which is good and bad, because at the district, they're still going to provide services like through school. Yeah. But their focus is so much more on school as opposed to like the individual child. So they are trying to set up your child to be like the best student they can be, not necessarily giving them the services like with early intervention where it's like really particular to that child. So once he was in preschool, my husband and I were pretty positive at that point that what we were dealing with was autism.
But you hadn't had, like, you didn't know for sure.
We didn't know for sure. We actually didn't get him diagnosed until he was 4. He had just turned 4. Part of that is because it's a very long process. And it's super long. And especially like here, the doctors, like most of them that see kids that young have an really long wait list. So we were on like, I think an 8-month wait list.
Wow.
Yeah. With a specialist to see him.
Wow.
We took him to a developmental pediatrician for the diagnosis, but there is like a lot of different ways to get the diagnosis. That was just kind of the recommendation from our pediatrician. And basically it was a full like neurological comprehensive evaluation. He was seen by a speech therapist, an OT, a social worker, the doctor herself. Like I said, it's super long process. You fill out paperwork for like months in advance. There was like a stack of paperwork that they sent me. And this is from like birth, even before birth to then, which he had, you know, just turned 4 at that point. So then you actually, for the evaluation itself, we went and it was several hours long and they're all, you know, seeing him and watching him. And like I said, we were pretty sure that was what we were dealing with, but you always kind of like, you want to talk yourself out of it. You know, there are certain times for sure where you're like, maybe it's just a delay, or, you know, maybe he's like, has ADHD or something. Like you don't want your child to have autism, obviously.
Right.
But we also were not, you know, in the dark about it. Like we knew that was probably what was going to happen. So yeah, that day we, you know, took him for the evaluation, and, when the doctor came in and said, you know, your son has autism spectrum disorder, we cried a lot. Mm-hmm. It was hard. It was still, even though you expected it, still really hard to hear. So that was, I mean, it was tough, but at least at that point, we knew what we were dealing with and we were able to have a game plan to kind of move forward. There wasn't so much of this darkness of like not knowing. So I literally cried that entire day. I was really sad. I felt really, you question everything. You want answers that you're not going to get. You want to know why. You want to know, like, why is this your child? But that's not going to do anyone any good. The only thing that you can do is move forward. So I literally woke up the next day and they'd given me the number for the Autism Resource Center, like through the hospital that we had taken him to for the diagnosis. And I just started making phone calls and started trying to figure out our game plan, so to speak. So now that was like over 2 years ago at this point. Logan does ABA therapy, which is like the most commonly prescribed therapy for kids on the spectrum. And that stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. And basically it's behavioral therapy, but that sounds like a little harsh. It's behavioral therapy in the fact that like everything that we do is a behavior. Like, you know, if I pick up this water bottle and go to drink it, like for me, that doesn't take a lot of effort. For someone with autism, that is like a process because you have to like signal to yourself like, okay, I want to drink water. I'm going to pick up this water bottle. I'm going to carefully sip it so I don't spill it all over myself. So those are the kind of things that they work on in ABA, where it just like kind of breaks everything down to make it manageable for somebody with autism who thinks about things differently. So for our son, it's really been incredible because he honestly like didn't even know. He needed to learn like how to learn, basically. He needed to kind of start at the beginning with things and then work on it like piece by piece. And he's at the point now where I can tell him like, you know, take off your shoes, go put your shoes away. And he can do that. That probably doesn't sound like a lot because he's 6 years old. But for a 6-year-old with autism like him, it's a lot. And those are like things that we cherish and that we're so happy that he's able to like understand those things. Whereas before it was like, it was completely over his head. So that's where ABA is really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can get a bad rap, which we can get into that later too. But I feel like there's so many.
I haven't heard about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I knew you were coming over to talk about this. So I started looking up some statistics and things like that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you said, you know, we didn't want our kid to have autism, but we weren't in the dark about it. And some of the stuff that I was reading said that a lot of people kind of almost avoid getting diagnosed or having their kid get diagnosed. Do you think maybe it's because it's such a long process like you were describing?
I'm sure the process is scary, but I think the actual, you know, the diagnosis and having that label on your child is probably a lot scarier. And I know there are people who probably are in denial about things and they would kind of just rather bury their head in the sand as opposed to, you know, kind of like just tackling it. And I totally get that because I know that feeling of being scared and not wanting to move forward, but also knowing it's the best thing for my child. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I definitely see both sides to it for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think that the process is daunting for sure.
Right. Well, and I also was reading that there's so many different forms of autism as well. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
So autism now, they just call everything autism spectrum disorder. You used to hear about like Asperger's, or there's another PDD-NOS, which is like, these are all things that like we used to hear about. And you still sometimes hear those floating around, but basically, like, autism is a spectrum. So just like you and me are completely different people, no two people with autism are the same. There's a saying that if you know one person with autism, then you know one person with autism, because it's like everyone is so different. Everyone's needs are so different. Everyone's challenges are so different. So that's kind of where that comes into, like, there's not necessarily different forms of it, but they're just, it's a whole spectrum, and it's all very gray area because it is so different from each individual.
Yeah. Where my lady's at, I got to talk to you about birth control. Everybody's body is so different, and getting birth control that is right for you can be a hassle. And even just the process of getting to the doctor and having to get your prescription filled, and what happens if you forgot, you can't miss a day, and that can mess up your cycle. And that is why For Hers is helping women across the country. There's more than 10 million women in the US that take the pill, and they struggle to receive it on time when they need it. That's a real problem. It's time to level with the healthcare playing field and get what we need for our bodies, for our form of birth control that we're taking. And like I said, they know that everybody's body is so different. They offer 10 well-known birth control options. And it's whether you're already taking birth control or you have no idea where to start, For Hers will connect you to a doctor online who can help determine the option that is going to be best for you. You don't have to take time off work for that in-person doctor's appointment or wait in pharmacy lines. They literally make it so easy for you because they realize that life is busy, and sometimes you don't have time, to take time out of your schedule to go get birth control. That is why For Hers is empowering women by letting you get your birth control when you need it, where you need it, and getting you that support that you need by having online doctors and helping you figure out what's best for your body. And right now, our listeners are going to get their first month of birth control from forhers.com for just $5 right now while supplies last. And it's subject to doctor approval, and you can see their website for full details. So go to forhers.com/babes. That's FORHERS.com/babes. forhers/babes. Restrictions apply. See website for full details. Would you say... So Hollywood likes to project certain stereotypes about people, right? And I see that with birth as a doula. Like in all the movies, your water breaks, you go to the hospital. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
this is
That
all wrong.
happened to me, though, by the way.
That did happen. Wow. You're in the 1 in 10.
I know, that's true.
Yeah, but most people, that's not, so you have to teach women the signs for labor and when to go, because you could be at an 8 with your water still intact.
Right,
You could have your baby in the sack still. So it's it projects everything kind of a certain way. Do you notice that with autism?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, now I am a fan, like, that there's all these shows and different, like, in the media, there's a lot. Autism is definitely, you're hearing about it more and more. I'm so thankful for that. Even though the portrayals tend to be with high functioning individuals, I don't like to use terms like high functioning, low functioning. But sometimes, like, especially in those cases, there's nothing else to call it. Because, like, my husband and I watched Atypical. We liked it. We thought it was really cute. A lot of people were not happy with it, though, because they're like, oh, he's so high functioning, and they're only showing one side of autism, which is totally true. They also say that on the show. They talk about how, their kiddo is high functioning. So I appreciate they at least address that, because I'm sure a lot of people watching are thinking, like, oh, like, this kid, he's a little quirky and different, but, like, autism's not so bad. You know what I mean? So it's like you have this like skewed reality of what autism is. Whereas again, that is one character with autism. So like my son, he's 6 years old. He is still basically nonverbal. So that was a word that I had never even heard until I had a child who was nonverbal. Yeah. So basically, like if you went up to him and said, hey, Logan, how are you? He would not be able to respond to you. He would probably say hi. and he would smile at you. So he has some words, but he cannot have a conversation. He can like request certain things, and he uses what's called PECS, which is everything in autism is acronyms, but it's Picture Exchange Communication System.
Yeah.
So he has this little binder that he literally carries like on a strap with him, and they're just little pictures, and he has a strip at the bottom so he can make sentences. So like if he wants a glass of water, he'll give the strip, and it'll have a little PECS for I want. It's like hands coming forward, like this is what I want. And then it will say more, and there'll be a little picture of a glass of water. So it's like, that's how he would tell me like, Mom, I'm thirsty, I want water, as opposed to saying, I want water.
Yeah.
Now I have a 3-year-old daughter who has been saying, give me water since she was, 18 months old. So it's so different, and it's like really interesting to have kind of like a foot in both worlds. But that's where I think the awareness really comes into play.
Yeah.
Because we see these portrayals and we think, oh, that's autism. That's one very small sliver of autism.
Yeah. Well, and I had mentioned to you before, what I thought was kind of cool was Amy Schumer came out talking about her husband had gotten diagnosed with high functioning autism. And so I was reading an article about it, and she was basically saying that people are like, why did you come out about that? Why'd you share that? And she's like, because I think it's important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's something that we can talk about. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not, this is what's happening. And she had talked about, she thinks that people really avoid getting diagnosed, because I don't think he got diagnosed until his adult life. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that, here's the thing. If you're able to wait until you're an adult to get a diagnosis, you are definitely a high functioning individual. But there are people. I also have a podcast, and I had a guest on a couple weeks ago who she is an autism mom herself. She has 2 children on the spectrum. And then she herself, after having her children diagnosed, realized, I think I'm on the spectrum too. And it led her to seek a diagnosis in her like late 20s. So it's really interesting because it is such a spectrum. It is so wide and varied. There are some things that look blaringly obvious as autism, which like I'm sure a lot of people listening don't realize, but there's things like eye contact that's really difficult for people with autism. There's certain, like, they call it stimming behavior, which is like, if someone was sit there and like twirl their hair or like tap their fingers or chew their nails, that would be like a stimming behavior. But people with autism, they do those things, but then they also do like hand flapping is a really, really common one that you hear. My son does a lot of like vocal stimming. So even though he's nonverbal, he is the loudest person you'll ever meet. He like never stops making noise. And there'll be like different kind of like sounds that will be like repetitive, and things of repetitive nature tend to be like really common signs of autism, like spinning in circles. I mean, there's so many different things that would be a sign of autism. Yeah. And it's so interesting because with my son, like, even though he had the speech issues and he didn't, the biggest thing, especially my husband talks about this, is that he wasn't responding to his name, which is a really common occurrence with autism. When he was like about a year old, my husband said he was like calling for him and realizing he wasn't listening. Yeah. And he was like, maybe he's deaf. My husband has deafness in his family. And that also, especially after talking to so many autism families, that's like everyone's first thought is they're like, oh, they can't hear me. I mean, sometimes it could be that for sure, but a lot of times it ends up being an autism diagnosis because that's a really common sign. So things like that we noticed them, but there weren't like tons of huge red flags, especially when he was younger. So all of his therapists, like in early intervention, were like, I don't think it's autism. I don't think he has autism. And so we were like, okay, it's not autism. Like, maybe it's just a delay. They called it a global delay back then because it was like in most areas where kids would be developing, he was behind. And that's something that I think that a lot of people hear too, is this global delay. But it was interesting because it is so different. So like I said, we thought that, okay, maybe it's not autism. And then as time went on and we were just noticing more and more little things. And as he got older, a 2-year-old not talking is not such a big deal. A 3-year-old not talking is a bigger deal. A 4-year-old not talking is a big deal. So it was like things that we were kind of able to
we were concerned about, but we were like, okay, maybe he'll catch up. We started to realize, okay, this isn't a matter of catching up. He's on a totally different playing field than we are on. And we need to get onto his playing field so that we can help him.
Yeah. So since I guess he started therapy and doing all of that, they said that he had a global delay before.
Right.
Is he, I guess, at the same level with the other kids in school?
So he is in what they call a self-contained class. Okay. So he's with all of his peers right now in his class have autism.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's kind of cool.
It is cool. Yeah. It is cool. It's a smaller group. I think there's like 7 kids. So they're very focused. They definitely, the day looks a lot different than it probably did, like when you and I were in school.
Right.
The great thing about Logan in his school is that he's able to get pushed in with his typically developing peers. So right now he does music class with his peers. He is the kind of kid with autism that a lot of times you hear about the sensory aversions where it's like they don't want to hear loud noise. They put their hands over their ears. They don't want to be around a lot of people. It's overwhelming. That's when they kind of will like shut down or melt down. He's what you call a sensory seeker. So like he loves it. If he was here right now, he'd be reading every one of your books. He would be touching everything.
Oh my gosh.
He would love you. He would like, he wants to like hug everyone. Like so in a lot of ways, like doesn't look like your typical, child with autism because he's not necessarily like, he's definitely not in a shell by any stretch.
Yeah.
So he loves that. So going to music class for him is great because he's able to be with his typically developing peers. And then it's kind of like, especially when they're young, monkey see, monkey do. So it's like they see the kids, oh, they're all sitting down and listening. Maybe I should try that. Now, there's other kids in his class that like that's not appropriate for. They would have a hard time with that. So they don't get pushed into music class. So it's very like individual for each child. Our goal obviously would be to get him into a general ed class last year. So he started kindergarten this year. So things were it was a transformative year for all of us. So he had been in preschool, like a special education program through our district. Again, smaller class sizes with kids who were on the spectrum, but also, maybe just kids who had like ADHD or like other type learning disabilities. So it wasn't necessarily like all focused on autism. So then trying to figure out like the right placement for him in kindergarten was a bit of a challenge because we toured like several schools and programs to see what would be the best fit for him.
Yeah.
And one of the tours that I did was with a typical kindergarten classroom because it was possible that he would be able to go to the kindergarten class with an aide, with like a one-on-one, they call it a paraprofessional. So I was like, maybe he could do that. Like, I don't know. He's catching up. He's doing really great. So I go and I observe the classroom and it was like the teacher stands up front and she's like, okay, kids, what did we just read the story about? And they were like, a bunny. And she's like, okay, write that down. And they all start writing down bunny. And I'm like, we are light years away from this. Like,
not yet.
We are nowhere near this. And that's okay. That's totally okay. So then we knew like, okay, that program is not appropriate for him. Let's keep on looking. Yeah. And it was kind of finding like that middle ground because it's like you want to be able to like push them just so far without pushing them too hard or they're going to get frustrated. So there's always like in therapy too, there's kind of like that delicate balance of like you want them to, you almost want to have that little bit of frustration because that's like motivation, but it's like you don't want to upset them. You just want to give them those tools that they're able to like be motivated and move forward while still, keeping the peace basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a journey.
Oh, it's a journey, Liz. It's a real journey. Yeah.
Wow, you must have so much just love and patience and understanding.
It's so funny because like when Logan was first diagnosed or even beforehand, people would say to me like, oh, God gives special needs kids to special parents. And that used to like piss me off.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, no, I am the same as you. I get frustrated. This is hard. Like I didn't plan for this. But as time has gone on, I'm like, I kind of think that's true.
Yeah.
Because like, listen, I'm so far from perfect. I screw up all the time. But my son has given me the most incredible purpose in my life to be not only his mother, but to be his advocate and to advocate for autism. Like, I just feel like this is my life's work and I'm so happy to be doing it. And I wouldn't have realized this if I didn't have him. There's so many things that I wouldn't have realized without him. Cause I mean, like I said, I have 2 other kids too. So it's like mom stuff is not, it's nothing new to me, but like the autism stuff, so new. And I'm learning all the time. But I'm honestly just so thankful for him because he has he has taught me so much. I have like a different pair of eyes that I look at with everything now.
Yeah.
Just a totally different lens.
That's so cool, though.
Oh my God, it's incredible.
But
it's
when
incredible.
you are in that moment, sometimes those cliche sayings can be super annoying, you know? Like,
oh, there's so many like people, you know, because obviously like
gosh.
April is Autism Awareness Month, and people, you know, there's lots of different articles circulating online, and everybody means well. And that is one thing that I have learned is that people, they mean well. Even when they piss you off and annoy you, you have to just like, or at least you have to tell yourself they mean well. They probably don't always.
Right. They probably have good intentions.
They probably
you
do.
know, they're not trying to, ooh, I'm going to piss her off.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. But it's like, I will get tagged in like the same article like 17 times. And it's like, you know, someone who they're like, oh, this made me think of you and Logan. And it's like, I'll read it and it's like, nothing like me and Logan, except for the fact that it's like a mother and son, and the son has autism. So like in those ways, like I'm kind of like,
this kid has autism too.
Right.
It's just like you.
Yeah.
And
like
you're
you
like,
tell someone,
no.
oh, like my son has autism. Like, oh, my neighbor's kid down the street has autism. And you're like,
great.
Okay. Yeah. So things like that, you have to just like take with a grain of salt. The one thing that I do talk about a lot that I'm trying to like change the dialogue on is people will say to me when I tell them like, oh, my son has autism, the first thing they want to say is, oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
You wouldn't even believe it. Like I hear that so often. And like, I understand that like, it's probably because there isn't enough awareness for people to understand that like autism is not a death sentence. And I get it because before my kid was diagnosed, I felt like it was. I didn't know what I was dealing with. But now when I hear that, I just say to them, oh no, don't be sorry. Like my kid's amazing. And that's the honest to God truth. And I hope that people can understand and like open up their mind a little bit more to understand that like autism is a part of my son. It is not who he is.
Right.
And just like everyone else on the spectrum, it is a part of them, but they are a full human. You know, there's so much more. That's why like a lot of times you hear people say, I'm using air quotes, person first language, meaning like I would say Logan has autism as opposed to saying like, oh, he's autistic. Because when you say, and some people think that like it's better to say they're autistic. There's a whole like debate within the autism community. I would rather say that my son has autism than say he's autistic, because to me it's like he's so much more than just being autistic.
Something he has.
Yes, exactly.
It's not what he is.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to talk to you real quick about something that I've shared on here before, and that is BetterHelp.com, guys. It is such an amazing resource. There's so many people out there that have reached out to me that are going through different things and they feel like they have no one to talk to. And I know that there's so many people listening to this that feel the same way, and you don't have to go through things alone. BetterHelp online counseling is there for you. They connect you with a professional counselor in a safe and private online environment, and it's so convenient for you. You can do it through text, through video, chat. They make sure that you're paired with the right person for you. They can help you if you're struggling with depression, anxiety, relationships, sleep, anger, grief, or just the things that are going on in society if you're having trouble processing them. There's over 3,000 U.S. licensed therapists, and they are available worldwide. And that is why it's so amazing. Because you can literally access them from anywhere. And once you sign up, you can start communicating within 24 hours. They have so many amazing online counselors, like I said, to help you. And financial aid is available for those who qualify. Money should not be a reason that you aren't seeking the help that you need. It's secure, it's convenient, they're professional, and it's truly an affordable option. Babes and Babies podcast listeners get 10% off your first month with the discount code BABIES. So why not get started today? Go to betterhelp.com/babies. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help assess your needs and get matched with a counselor that you'll love. That's betterhelp.com/babies. But it's so good that you're sharing this, because I feel like there's probably people listening. They're like, oh crap, I accidentally slipped and said I'm so sorry once to somebody who told me that.
That's okay. That's totally fine.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's because you don't get it. You don't know what you don't know. There. Right. Exactly.
That's just the truth. And it's funny because like, so my podcast, I talk with other moms and people like in the field, mostly other parents, but like I do talk with other therapists and stuff. So it's like, we are all very like, we speak the language of autism. So it's funny because now that I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm like, oh, this is like, I got to go to like basics. So I'm trying to like tell myself like, okay, like these, like you people, because there's a lot of people
layman's
that they know,
terms.
right, that know nothing about autism. And like, those are the people that we need to reach. So it's like, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, I probably am like talking like overheads, and I'm not trying to do that, but
no, you haven't said anything too crazy that I haven't understood.
If you have any questions, because people talk to me sometimes and they, like I said, everything is an acronym, and they'll use some acronym. They're like, oh yeah, like DRONA, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. Like there's so many things that like, even for me, like I feel like I'm pretty well versed. It gets really confusing.
Yeah. I think acronyms in general confuse me.
They're so confusing.
Well, because now just even I get annoyed for some reason with the ones that the ones that all moms use for different ones. I don't know
stuff
why.
Is difficult. Yeah.
I don't know what this means. And then I'm like, okay.
You'll give it a little, once you have a kid, you'll be like, oh yeah, I understand. We're, TTC. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
No, right. I had to learn all those too.
I know. I'm still working on it. I'll see something. And
There's
I'm
like cheat sheets that are really helpful. Cause I remember like being on message boards, like especially when Logan was little. Cause like he was my first kid. I didn't know a lot. And I was actually a nanny before I had kids. So I had like a little bit of understanding. But yeah, when you're online then and everyone is using like, it's all letters. Like I'm like, I don't know what this means. I don't know. It's confusing.
I'm not good with the stuff.
You'll figure it out.
No, well, one other thing we were talking about before was, according to autismspeaks.org, it says 1 in 59 children in the United States have autism, but you were saying that there's debates that it might be even more.
Yeah. Okay, so something else I should just say. Autism Speaks is like the biggest, like you always hear about Autism Speaks, and Autism Speaks is not, no, it's okay. But I want to say this though, because like even people within the autism community don't even always know this. Autism Speaks does not have the best reputation like within the autism community, because even though they do fund a lot of research, which I think is wonderful, they are not necessarily the best with like using that platform. Like they don't hire people. They don't hire a lot of people with autism. Like everyone on their board, is a neurotypical person, as we would say.
Right.
So things like that, I just want to point that out because, and then on top of it too, like the last couple of years, my family and I, we had done a walk for Autism Speaks in Chicago where like, we're like, oh, this is great. Like we're going to have like the camaraderie. We raised like a lot of money for Autism Speaks, which awesome. we were like so excited and so proud. But a lot of the money for Autism Speaks goes to the pockets of the individuals working for Autism Speaks. So just a PSA, because I know you guys are going to see tons of like, like donate to this and that.
Well, they were one of the first that came up when I Googled autism.
Yeah, Autism Speaks, they are like, they're like the biggest for sure. So you're going to find that, not to say they're all bad, because they're not. There's a lot of people that are like, Autism Speaks is a hate group. I would not go that far. I definitely do think that there's like, not necessarily the best practices going on. There's so many like great smaller autism organizations. Like I just want to shout out the Autism Hero Project, which is a local charity. And the president, Tamika, has been on my podcast, but every dollar, every penny they make goes towards children on the spectrum who don't have medical insurance, and then they actually provide the medical insurance for them so that they can get ABA therapy and speech and OT. Yeah. So it's like, I would so much rather, I think now about all the money that we raised for Autism Speaks, and like I think about all that money that could have gone towards an actual child on the spectrum. Yes, exactly. Right. So, okay, I just want to throw that out there. But like you were saying, yes, autism, the statistic that you see most now is 1 in every 59 children. First of all, that alone is huge. That's so many kids. That's so many kids.
That's a lot.
Yes, that's so many kids. But there are a lot of studies and things that say that it's probably even more than that. Like I've seen even like 1 in 48 or probably even fewer, because there are a lot of kids who are undiagnosed, and that's either like lower income areas, or even like I was saying, girls on the spectrum a lot of times kind of fly under the radar because they don't present the same way that boys do.
Can you give us some of those?
Yeah, for sure.
Differences?
So, I mean, I have a son. So, and I will say it's so interesting because you always hear that. I think it's like 4 times more common with boys is what the actual like statistic is. And you always hear that, and I was aware of that. I have never been more aware that since doing my podcast, because everyone that reached out to me, they all have sons. There's like so few. And then every now and then I'll have an episode with a girl mom, and the girl moms are like, yay, a girl mom. And I'm like, I know, but it's just like there really are so many more boys diagnosed. So I think part of that is because, I mean, I don't want to get like too like gender norm, but like you know, you and me, like we're girls obviously. And like, I'm a girly girl. Like I love makeup, and I love, you know, like watching movies and things that are like more like in line with being a
quote
girl.
unquote,
yeah. Quote unquote. And like typically girls are going to be, you know, I'm more on like the nurturing side. I'm totally like generalizing because this is like why I don't feel this way, but this is why it's underdiagnosed, because a lot of times girls on the spectrum, they don't necessarily have the behaviors that like the boys have, where it's like aggression. That's another like kind of common sign. Like, not that girls can't have it, but it's not as common with girls in the spectrum. Like they a lot of times can just present like an emotional little girl, where people are like, oh, she's, you know, she's just a little girl. She's emotional.
She's so sensitive,
yes,
or dramatic,
yes,
or anything
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Things like that like, when you don't have a lot of those like really common signs of autism, they really can go under the radar. Like I was saying, that girl that I had on, that woman I had on, who she's a mother on the spectrum, and then she was diagnosed herself. The way she was describing herself as a child, and she was like, looking back now, like I was really obsessed with my favorite movies, and I would like repeat the lines, and I would, you know, learn all the words. And I was like, I used to do that too. But it's like, these are things that, you know, typical girls probably would do.
Yeah.
She just did them to like a little bit higher degree. And it was still like not, you know, it wasn't so out of the ordinary that people were like, oh, what's going on with that? But it was like maybe a little bit different, and nobody really looked at it too carefully, because they were like, oh, that's like typical enough. She's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Or typical of her.
Right.
You know, and I mean, I used to do that too. I was a weirdo who I was obsessed with the movie The 10 Commandments, the 3-hour long one.
Oh my gosh.
As a child.
Really odd childhood movie.
I liked really weird movies.
I liked
when
like True Beverly Hills, but okay. The 10 Commandments, okay.
And I watched The Nutcracker a lot, I guess.
These are like heavy movies for a child.
I don't know why. I was always a super emo kid.
Okay.
Very into my feelings from a young age.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I could see how those behaviors would be different, because yes, for boys, they tend to be more aggressive.
Right.
You know, I was actually reading something the other day that was completely different. They had to do with suicide rates in boys and girls. And they said it's actually increasing in girls because boys act out aggressively.
Right.
Whereas girls act out in social behavior, like social aggression. So by saying something mean about you or getting people to not like you, whereas boys are like, screw you, I'm going to punch you in the face. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, so that's weird that you were bringing that up now, because I was trying to think, I guess, of like the behavior differences a little bit, because I don't have kids. I have nieces and nephews. But I mean, there are, I guess, the typical roles for kids, you know, and then obviously there's people who don't fall into the quote unquote typical roles.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think with girls, it's just like I was saying before, like there's a lot of gray area. I think with girls, there's even more gray area, because there are so many things that just like, you know, the gender roles that we have like so engraved in our minds, that it's like, as long as the girls kind of like fall somewhere inside of that, they don't present like so many like, you know, red flags. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's not an issue. Right. So I'm probably like not explaining this well, but
there's like somebody listening who's like, my daughter memorizes all these movies, like all freaked out now.
I did that too. Yeah.
Right. No, same.
But that's what I'm saying, is that like, that would be something that would be totally like within the realm of possibility. But then it's like, is it to a degree though, that's like a little bit past, you know, what you may see with like a typical child. So those are the kind of things, because again, like there's going to be the kids who have like the blaring obvious red flags, but there's also going to be a lot of kids who present really differently.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, like my son, like that's something you hear a lot is people are like, oh, you know, a lot of people with autism, like they don't want to be touched. They don't want hugs. My son is the exact opposite. And he always has been. He's a total cuddle bug and like so affectionate and almost like to like, he can sometimes be like too affectionate with like strangers. So things like that. But like people don't, when you think about it, you think about someone who like kind of wants to be like on their own. He's not like that at all. So it's like, there's so many different things that, you know, it just looks so different from person to person.
Do you think that boys are 4 times more likely to have it, or they're just 4 times more likely diagnosed because we don't pick up on those clues for the girls?
I think that boys, maybe not 4 times more likely, but there is like actual like brain, you know, studies done where they are more susceptible to autism. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely more common in boys. We know that for sure, but like I was saying, there probably are more girls undiagnosed. But there's it still is more common in boys. And that's something that like I was saying before, even experts like don't have a ton of answers. And that's like one of the things that we don't have answers to. And you can read like 20 different studies and find out 20 different things. They're going to tell you something different every time. It is really confusing. Like literature about autism tends to be really confusing because there's so many different opinions, and that's what they are, as opinions. So it's like one person can believe one thing, another person another. And it's like, you just kind of have to find your own, what fits best for you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. I just feel like it would be so hard, I guess, to figure out what route to take.
Yeah.
Like you're saying that there's all this different information out there. Mm-hmm. All right. So at the beginning of the year, I talked on the podcast about how one of my New Year's resolutions this year was to read more books, which I've definitely made an effort to do that. And now my pile of books is getting bigger and bigger. But I recently discovered a really cool app that I want to share with you guys, and that is the Blinkist. There are so many books on there to choose from, and what they do is they condense it for you. So in less than 15 minutes, I feel like I fast-tracked my way through a book. I downloaded a bunch of like marketing and business ones because I'm trying to grow my doula business right now. And Vito and I had talked about like wanting to read a bunch of parenting books before we become parents. And they have a list in there of all of these. And instead of having to sit and read through the whole book, I can read it in 15 minutes and feel more informed, feel educated on a topic. There's a couple of books in there that a lot of parents love. They have the Yes Brain, which talks about how to cultivate courage and curiosity and resilience in your child, how to talk so kids will listen, and listen so kids will talk. That's another book. They have the book No Drama Discipline. They have a book, Uniquely Human, Different Ways of Seeing Autism, which is what we're talking about in this podcast. So that's an amazing resource. The Happy Kid Handbook. There's so many parenting books in there. And like I said, not just parenting. I'm doing ones on business. It's such an amazing resource because we know that not everyone has time to just sit down and read a book, but you have 15 minutes that you can put into it and really get something out of a book instead of having to take hours. So I wanted to offer this app to you guys as well. So right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. So go to Blinkist.com/babies and start your free 7-day trial. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist.com/babies to start your free 7-day trial. That's Blinkist, Blinkist.com/babies to start your 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/babies. Before you had mentioned, can you just touch on that therapy again? Was it ABA
therapy?
Okay.
Yeah. So like I was saying, ABA is the most commonly kind of prescribed therapy for kids on the spectrum. And the reason why it's so commonly prescribed is because it is like backed by clinical science. If you were to sit in on one of my son's sessions, some of it looks like educational. A lot of it just looks like them kind of playing or, doing like puzzles or like sorting activities, things like that. But everything that they're doing with him, they are tracking data. So like every time he, picks the right shape or whatever, they're tracking that. So remember like the first time we do a team meeting like every 4 to 6 weeks where we can kind of just all, because that's the thing is that usually you have more than one therapist. You usually have several therapists. So you need to have a team and you need to all kind of get together because they're all here on different days. So it's like we get together so that we can kind of discuss like what's working, what's not working. The first time that we sat down for one of those meetings, they had his BCBA, which is like kind of the ringleader of everything. It stands for Board Certified Behavior Analysis. So they're the ones that actually like write the plans. Yeah. And then the therapists are the ones that carry them out. Again, more acronyms.
I know.
Yeah. There's so many. She had sent me an email the night before and she was like, hey guys, here's the team note for tomorrow. And I thought it was going to be like, Logan's doing great at this, blah, blah, blah. No, I got like actual like graphs, like it was like spreadsheets. Oh, wow. It was spreadsheets of like what all the programs they've been doing with him and like all the dates, like what he was doing on this day and how that all works. And like if there's a, you know, if he's charting like to a rising chart, so many things that like I didn't even realize what was going on. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm like, this is why people talk about ABA so much, because it's like, not only are they doing these therapies and working on things that, like I said, seem so basic to us, but it's like things that like these kids really need help with, but they are tracking everything and they are using this data to move forward. So it's like if a program that they're running with him isn't working and they see like, okay, he's trending down, like we're going to tweak it so we can fix it so that he's going to be trending up. So basically with him, it's like, and this I think is pretty much across the board with ABA, you work on certain programs and then it's like once they've gotten everything in that program so many times and they've mastered it, so to speak, then it's like they move on to the next program. So for him, we saw a pretty big difference right away with ABA just because he had that structure. A lot of kids with autism and adults have a really, like with my son, I always say, I'm like, when he has too much time on his hands, like he just looks for trouble, which like what little boy doesn't, but his trouble is like to a certain degree. Like he can find trouble really well. So for him, it was just really nice to have like that structure because ABA is very time intensive. You're probably going to be like, what? We do ABA in our house 6 days a week. So he has therapy Monday through Saturday. And he does 3 hours a day.
Wow.
So it's a lot.
Yeah.
And like before we started it, I would hear people talk about it. They're like, I'm like, I can't do that. Like that's going to take over our lives. Like, how are we going to make, I'm like, how am I going to expect my little boy to do, like, that's so much to put on him. But then I saw once we started it, how well he took to it. And like I said, having that structure, his therapists are like, honestly, like family and like just almost immediately, even though we weren't seeing like huge differences immediately, almost immediately we did see like just a shift in his like persona, so to speak. Like it was like he was able to, I always use this analogy and I talk about this on my podcast too, but like I sometimes just feel like his wheels aren't turning and I'll say that. I'll be like, his wheels are just not turning today. And it's like, what I've always like loved about my son so much is he has like so much just like life within him. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I'm his mother, so I think he's like, you know, the best. But I just, from the time he was a baby, it was like he just like, he smiled with his whole face. And it was just like, he had so much like in there. And then like, as he got older and these behaviors started to come out more, there were times when, not that I didn't see it, but it was like, I just would be like, the lights aren't on today. And that's honestly how it felt. Like it was literally like, there's days where it's like, you're banging your head against a wall and it's tough for sure. So with him, I almost immediately saw this shift where I'm like, I can see his wheels are turning. Even if he's not answering correctly, he's thinking about it in a way that he didn't think about it before. So, I mean, ABA has done so much for us, but that alone to me is just huge. Knowing that like it's getting him to a point where it's like I was saying before, like he learned how to learn. Like he learned what he needed to do, which that's actually something that somebody on my podcast had said. And I was like, that's brilliant. That is what ABA does. Like it teaches these kids how to learn. Yeah. And like and ABA also tends to get a bad rap.
Yeah. Well, you had kind of said that before.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff like within the autism community, like I said, you can never win. I'm a huge advocate though for ABA, and I've always remained firmly in that. The reason being is because there's a lot of people with autism, like my son, who are nonverbal. They need a lot more support. I don't like to say low functioning, but he needs a lot more support than like, you know, somebody else on the spectrum would. And for him, ABA is incredible because like I said, it gives him that structure. It gives him the routine. It gives him the tools to be a functioning human being. And I'm not saying low functioning, high functioning. I'm just saying functioning in general. Like it puts him in his body, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of other people on the spectrum that like, they don't need help with that. They're already in their body. Like Amy Schumer's husband, he doesn't need ABA. You know what I mean? Like
right.
People that are able to like, you know, be out there.
He's a professional
job.
chef.
Yeah,
like.
exactly. Like you've got, I mean, that's, you know, it's obviously creative, but it's like, yeah, if you are able to be, you know, this like high functioning human being, like, no, of course you don't need ABA. But I think that like, especially in years past, I mean, we know more about autism now than we ever did. We still don't know a ton. So like, think about the people that were diagnosed even like 10 years ago. ABA looked different then too. It's definitely like evolved into what it is today. But I think kind of from like the old days, it sort of has like a bad rap of people thinking that it's, and because it is so time intensive, I think that people look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, like that is so much therapy to put on a kid. That's just like telling a kid what to do, you know.
But I'm sure to your kid, it doesn't feel like therapy.
No. I mean, it's work. There's times when he'll kind of protest and he will, like I said, he's super loud. So there's times when he'll be like, like he doesn't want to do it. In those moments, it's like I said, we will push him to the point where we know it's like he's not going to go off the deep end. We will push him to the point where it's like we want him to work, we want him to get his stuff done, but we also don't want to push him too hard. I think in the past, maybe like some ABA therapists were too pushy, and that is what kind of gave that negative light to ABA therapy.
Right.
Like I said, I was actually just talking about this with somebody on Instagram the other day because they were like, wait, isn't ABA harmful? Because there are people that was like people on the spectrum that will be like, I survived ABA.
Oh, wow.
But like, these are people that, again, like this was, you know, probably a long time ago, probably wasn't a great fit with their therapist. There was probably a lot of different things at play that would make it a bad situation. I know or most parents with kids on the spectrum would never put my child in a potentially harmful situation. So when I hear that kind of thing, like, I'm just like, no, that's not what it is. But it's something that should be said because there are a lot of people that don't think that ABA is, and it's not appropriate for everybody, but for the people that it is appropriate for, it is like for us, it was like a game changer. Like it was like life changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. It's cool too that they gave you the graphs and all that different stuff. So
and
you
I
can
get
actually
that
see
every 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, we get to go over like every little thing and see like what's working, what's not, what do we need to tweak and change? What is he really excelling at? And where can, like with Logan, he's really good at matching. And it's amazing how like you can use matching in so many different ways. Like that is a really good way to like open the door to other things. In terms of like, you know, then like learning his like numbers and colors, like it's like you can use that for so many things. So it's like you got to kind of figure out their strengths and their weaknesses, obviously, and sort of go from there. And that's what ABA does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. All right. I'm going to take a minute to tell you guys about an easy way to stay feeling your best from the comfort of your own home, and that is Open Fit. It takes the complexity out of getting in shape. It's a brand new, super simple streaming service that allows you to work out in your living room, and you can work out as long as you want. You have 10 minutes that day to break a sweat. You can do that. If you want to do 30 minutes a day, you can do that. Literally, it's your schedule wherever you want. And they know that everybody's bodies are different, and that's why Open Fit is such an amazing program. They are personalized to meet your needs with custom tailored original content. They have amazing trainers and classes. It's super simple. You don't have to worry about finding that parking space at the gym. And what my problem is whenever I'm going to the gym, I'm like, what am I going to work out today? Should I do this? Should I do that? But it's nice because I can just play my favorite videos from home and get in an amazing workout. And there's just results that you can see. When you're putting in that time and effort, you are going to get results. One of my favorite programs is the Tough Mudder T-30. I actually competed in a Tough Mudder, oh man, how many years ago was it now? 7 years ago. So I was trying to see, I'm like, oh, could I do a Tough Mudder again? But it completely kicked my butt. It's an amazing class by Hunter McIntyre. And the reason I love it is because there's strength, endurance, and speed. And I like my workouts to kind of encompass a little bit of everything into them. So if you are looking for that, that's an amazing program that I can highly recommend. But OpenFit really has changed the way that I work out. And with the code BABES, you can join me on a fitness journey personalized just for you. Again, use the code BABES and start using OpenFit for your journey to a healthier life. And right now, the OpenFit 30-day challenge is happening, and the listeners get a special extended 30-day free trial membership to OpenFit. So you can get in shape. You can get your butt kicked for 30 days when you text BABES to 303030. You will get full access to OpenFit. All the workouts and nutritional information is going to be on there totally free, guys. Why not take advantage of that? And again, just text BABES to 303030. What would you say, let's say somebody is listening who has a kid that's autistic.
Yeah.
And they want to have more kids, but they're debating.
This is really hard.
Because, they're like, well, our first kid's autistic.
I know.
They're a lot of work.
So many. First of all, they're a lot of work, but also like it tends to, there's a lot of studies that show that it is like a genetic disorder. So they're like, even on my podcast, I have talked to so many families that have more than one child on the spectrum. So like for us, we had Logan before we had our second. So I got pregnant when he was 2.5, and we knew that he was, like I said, we knew we were probably looking towards a diagnosis at that point, but we still were thinking maybe it's this delay, maybe there's something else. So we knew we wanted to give him a sibling. So we were like, okay, we're going to, go ahead and have a baby. So then we had our daughter, and we were like, okay, we're done. Cause not too long after was when he got diagnosed. Also, after we had our daughter, I think it was just like the shift in everything at home that comes with the new baby.
Yeah.
A lot of his behaviors were like on an upswing, and he even developed some new ones. Like, especially at that time, it was really worrisome to me. He always runs around the house. Like, he's definitely got so much energy. And he was like literally running into walls though. And it was freaking me out. Like, I'm like, he's literally just like throwing himself into that wall because he wants that input. He wants to like I was saying, he's a seeker. He wants to feel everything.
Yeah.
He's not like hurting himself, but it was like, I thought he was like just a step away from hurting himself. So things that were really worrisome. So after we had our daughter, we were like, okay, we got a boy and a girl. Like, we got a lot on our plate. Everything's fine. And we ended up having a little surprise named Layla. So, that was a shock. And we were, I will not lie. We thought we were being careful. We obviously were not being careful enough. We were very, very surprised. And I was like terrified. I honestly felt like, I have so much on my plate at this point. Like, how am I going to juggle another baby? And then on top of that, what if this baby has autism? Like, yeah. I've already done this. And like, granted, I would know what I was doing now, but like, can we curse?
Yeah, you
this
can.
This shit is hard. This shit is hard. Like, I don't want to do this again.
Yeah.
This takes everything that I have in me. Now, granted, like, Layla she'll be a year old next month. For everything that we know, she is not presenting any signs of autism. If she did, I would do this again in a heartbeat. But it's still like going into it. These were the thoughts. These were the things that I was so worried about. Mm-hmm. So, to those parents, like, what I will say though is that after having Layla, it's amazing, like, what God gives you. And like, she is just a joy and like the most amazing, like, perfect baby. And she honestly has she has shown us a different side of Logan. Cause like when we had Liliana, he was still like in that not like very present mindset. And like, I always say, I'm like, he barely even looked at her like the first year of her life. Like, he honestly, I think he knew that she was there because she was colicky and screamed all the time. But like, he was not aware that like he was a big brother. This was his baby sister, nothing like that. When we had Layla, it was like, he showed us this like big brother, like caring, loving. He wanted to hold her. He'll go and smile at her. Like, he'll want to play with her. It's little bit. It's not like what you maybe would like. My daughter, who is her big sister, is like always smothering her in kisses and like wants to play all the time. It's not the same like that, but it's definitely like a huge shift from how it was.
Right. Like, he's her big brother.
Totally. And they see him 100%. That's all they see is their big brother. Yeah. They have I think my daughter, especially my 3-year-old, she's very like perceptive and emotional, like we were saying. And it's like, she definitely knows because she treats him different. Like, if he's upset, she'll be like, what's wrong, buddy? You're going to be okay. Like, she She's like light years ahead, I think, of most 3-year-olds in terms of like empathy, because she lives with this every day. This is all she knows. Mm-hmm. This could be like a whole other podcast talking about like siblings of autism, because I feel there's so much that goes into it. Mm-hmm. Because like as a mother, you want to give everyone 100% of the time. It's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in the best of circumstances.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So it's like there's so like right now he's on spring break from school. He's actually doing, this is something else we should talk about. So my son is 6 years old and he is still in diapers. And that is something that you see a lot with, children on the spectrum, where it's like potty training is a really difficult concept to grasp. It is difficult to grasp for any child. It definitely, like, it takes some time. We've been working on this with him now for like almost 2 years. He's very, very close. He's getting there. But what my daughter sees is we're taking him to his therapy center. We're dropping him off. All she sees is like, there's toys everywhere and people to play with. And she's like, I want to stay here. I want to play. And it's like stuff like that it's not like it's a big deal, but it's like he is always getting so much attention and so much like we're always like so focused on him. And I have so much of that guilt thinking like, oh, I just like, I don't ever want her to feel like he's my, or like when his therapist come over and she will immediately start like doing a little dance, like trying to get their attention. But it's like, they're there to see Logan. They're not there to see her. And that is something that like tugs at my heartstrings, like 24/7. Cause it's like, there's no way to fix it. But I wish that I could make her, feel better and give her all that attention. And it's like, I do my best, but it's hard for sure.
Yeah.
So those people that got a little off topic, the people that are like, how do I do this with more kids? You just do it.
Yeah. You learn.
Yeah. Just like with anything with motherhood, you just do it. And love is what propels you forward, and you just go with it. And that's it. That's my best advice.
I have some questions from some listeners, but I dropped my phone. Hold on.
Oh. We need like a musical interlude. There you go.
All right, let me look real quick here.
Okay.
I know a lot of people did have a lot of questions, so
that's awesome.
Let's see. See all. Okay. Advice for when patience dwindles due to behaviors and meltdowns.
I mean, I will say from like childhood was blessed with a lot of patience. Now that's not to say that my patience isn't tested, because it sure is. I think for me, what I have to remind myself, because there's been a few times where I'm like, oh, I just lost my cool and I feel so terrible about it. But I think with Logan, I hold him in a different regard because of his autism. And I was talking with a friend of mine about this recently, because I was complaining about something and I was like, oh, this is so hard. But I never want to like complain or like act like I'm, because
all moms complain about their kids. Right.
And that's what she said. Is she's like, Megan, I have, we don't deal with this. And like, I complain about my kids all the time and it's fine. And I'm like, I know, but in some ways, like I feel guiltier complaining, because it's like what he's doing, he really can't help it. Like, and he's trying and he's doing the best that he can. So I think that I would just say that, like in those moments that you really want to lose your cool, like, honest to God, just like stop and take a deep breath and think to yourself, like, this child is not doing this because they are trying to piss me off. They genuinely don't know that this is a problem. Now, that's not to say all the time. Sometimes they do know. I know with my son, 9 times out of 10, he's not doing something to be bad. He's doing it because he genuinely doesn't realize that this is like not the right thing to be doing. So I think like that, like just having that awareness helps, at least for me. I mean, like there's times when I want to like scream and I don't, but stuff like that for sure.
That's when you do the inner silent scream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a long car ride when your husband gets home and just like, be like blast the music.
I have to get groceries.
Yeah. Just like get out of the house, like listen to your music loudly and like cry if you need to, that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, it's so important for moms anyways. I mean, you're a human and you're going to lose your patience and you're going to lose your cool. And you do need some time to yourself sometimes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think that's like easier said than done, but like self-care, I think for any mom is so important. I think for special needs moms, it's like, we don't get a lot of that.
Well, you don't get any downtime.
Right. Yeah. You know? You're busy like all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So feelings on screen time.
Okay. So I am probably like in the minority here, but like not that I think that screen time is amazing. Like I know that kids like do you know what screen time is? You're looking at me like, what? Basically, like anytime
just kids playing with iPads.
Yeah. Or watching
stuff,
TV anytime they're in front of a
Yeah.
screen. Now I will say with my son, because he's so busy, like all of the day, the bus picks him up at 7:05 and he's done with therapy at 6 p.m. He goes to bed at like 7:30.
Yeah.
So we just don't have a lot of time for screen time. So for us, it's like we're busy enough that it doesn't come into
really
play.
a thing.
Yeah. Now I will say though, like there's certain apps or even honestly like YouTube, like there are so many things that my kids have learned from watching these shows. Logan's therapist had said to me, because now you probably don't know this, but like kids on YouTube, they watch other kids playing with toys. Like that's like a really big thing that kids watch, which I can understand it because like I see these things that my daughter's watching and I'm like, I would have loved watching this when I was little. Like it's a little girl with like a fully stocked dollhouse and she's just like playing with all the little pieces. So like I understand why kids are into this. But my son's therapist was like, YouTube taught my client how to play. Because it's like kids on the spectrum, like I was saying, it's a social communication disorder. Communication is such a huge part of playing. And a lot of kids, especially on the spectrum, like that make-believe play, that like imaginative play, that doesn't come naturally to them. So it's like they might start by like acting out these scenes that, you know, the other kids are doing, but then eventually like they're playing on their own. Logan, he always just loved Cars, the movie Cars. And like when he was little, he would watch the movie Cars and he, as the scenes were happening, he would go get his cars that were in the scene and he would line them up a certain way. And like things like that, I feel like, I mean, I know that like we should limit screen time. There's definitely reasons to do that, but it's not all bad is my opinion, but that's only my opinion.
There's so many controversial issues these days.
So oh my gosh, everything is a controversy.
Bluebird Mama said, just wanted to say hi from a fellow autism mom here.
Oh, hi Bluebird Mama. Yes.
Any tips on redirecting during meltdowns?
Okay, so we are pretty lucky that we don't deal with meltdowns all that often, which anyone listening maybe is not so familiar with the term like meltdown. Like you've heard the term meltdown, but what that means, especially for somebody on the spectrum, is like, it kind of looks like a tantrum and you would probably look at that kid and think like, oh gosh, that kid, like they don't know how to act. But for a child on the spectrum, a meltdown is like, they are completely melting down, like mentally, physically, emotionally, like there's no, like it's, everything has gone berserk basically. So, like I said, we don't deal with meltdowns often. We're very lucky because that's a really common issue with kids on the spectrum. But I will say I had a speech therapist on my podcast recently, and she was talking about kind of like tips, what to do during a meltdown. And I totally understand what that mom is saying, because you do think like, I want to redirect you. Like, oh, like let's, watch this TV show or play with this toy. Most of the time, the best thing to do is stop talking and just like give them their space. And it feels wrong as a mom. Like you want to hug them, you want to hold them. And if that helps them, by all means do it.
Yeah.
But if they need their time to just like melt down.
Yeah. Get it out.
Yeah. You kind of have to just like go with it. And it's heartbreaking. Logan has done in the past, we call it the sad cry, where it's like, he will like out of nowhere. He hasn't done it in a long time, thank God. He will out of nowhere just start crying. And it's I call it the sad cry because it's heartbreaking to hear it. Like it's like, it just sounds so sad. And the first few times he did it, I was like, let's get this toy. Let's play this. Do you want a snack? What can I do? And it was like, there was nothing that I was gonna be able to do to get him out of that. And even like like I said, he's super affectionate. He wants to cuddle and hug and sit around all the time. During those moments, he kind of did want to just like be by himself. And I kind of had to learn like, he needs some space. And like, it's really hard. It goes against everything that is natural to me, but like that sometimes is all you can do is like give them that space.
Right. Yeah. Well, I feel like, with kids who aren't autistic, it is easy to distract them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can be like, okay, like, this isn't working. You want this? Let's go do this or whatever, you know? But, I mean, when it comes to autism, it's something that maybe they're feeling and have to let out.
Yeah. You have to understand with autism is, like, their brains are wired differently.
Yeah.
And that is, like, at the basic of it, that's what it is. So it's, like, things that are comforting to us or to me, to you, might not be comforting to him. And that's okay. Right. So it's like, if you can find those things that are comforting, like, great, go with it. But sometimes it is just like, they need that moment. And it sucks, but it's like, you kind of, there's something you can do.
Right. I like this one. This person asked, what is the least helpful thing that anyone has ever said to you? And what is the most helpful thing?
That's a really good question. It's like really hard. I think least helpful would be like, because, and I everything that I'm saying right now, take it with a grain of salt, because there are things that are going to work for my kid that are not going to work for your kid. So I think sometimes, like, getting together with people who, you know, they're like-minded necessarily is not always the best, because it's like, well, you know, we did like A, B, and C for my kid. You hear about like diets a lot. Like, people are like, oh, you need to do another acronym, the GFCF diet, which is like gluten-free, casein-free, things that like people are pushing on you that like are maybe not, like, you don't feel that they're the best thing for your kid. I would say this to any mom in any situation. Like, if it's not jiving with you and what you feel, don't do it. So for me, like, people say things that are not helpful all the time. I'm pretty good at like just letting it roll off my back and being like, okay, great, I'll look into that. But like,
thanks, bye.
I think a lot of people, though, they feel like, well, should I be doing that? No, like, you should be doing what you feel is right for your kid.
Well, I think everyone's probably doing the best that they can. And like, of course, people are going to give you suggestions that maybe you're like, I've never heard of that, or I didn't think of that before. Right. But I'm sure a lot of parents with autism have done a lot of research.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's kind of where, like, I recently, it's getting a little better lately, but Logan has had a lot of sleeping issues, which is another really common issue for kids on the adults also on the spectrum. And I had put up a post on Instagram like, oh, we're dealing with this. I actually did an episode where I talked about it, and I got all this advice from people being like, oh my gosh, did you try melatonin? Did you try a weighted blanket? Did you try CBD oil? And I'm like, yes. Yeah. Like, it's like every single thing you're suggesting, I have tried. They didn't work. Not to say that I'm upset I tried them, but it was like things that people, you know, sometimes think like, oh, I've got the magic solution, but it's like 9 times out of 10, there's not a magic solution. And it's like, I'm so happy that worked for your kid, but like, it's not working for mine.
So maybe like just unsolicited advice, you know?
Completely. Yeah.
Because you're like, I've been through the ringer a little bit. I've been
on the block a couple times.
Well, and like you said, autism, I mean, it's such a wide, like, researchers don't even know a lot.
No,
like,
they don't.
So every kid is different, you know? And so everything, I mean, you had said something about the diet thing. Is that a thing with
That's
autism?
Like a really, it's super common, like, within the autism community. There's different, so there's the gluten-free, casein-free diet, but then there's also like just the dye-free, which is huge, or even like low sugar, like things like that. Some people are just gluten-free. For some kids, they see a huge difference. Yeah. And it's like these things are able, especially when there's a lot of like behaviors. And when I say behaviors, I mean more like aggressive behaviors or behaviors that are like harmful to the child. In those situations, like, obviously, if the diet is working, go for it. I always feel like, especially with my son, like, he is such a picky eater. Yeah. He barely eats as it is. He's like underweight. So I'm always like, I can't take anything out of his diet. Like, the kid wouldn't eat.
He needs the carbs.
Yes,
okay.
He needs the carbs. He totally needs it. Yes. So it's like, though, but that's where my mom sense is like, okay, you know, we don't really deal with behaviors like that. So to me, it's not worth it to like take away the carbs if it's going to mean my kid's not eating. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Things like that.
Well, and I've seen too, nutrition is a huge thing just for kids, not with autism. You know, kids in general. Like, I feel like that's something that, you know, if there is something wrong with your kid, I know my sister, her oldest son had just some behavioral issues and they switched some diet stuff and it worked for them. And then I had a friend who her son had similar issues. They switched the diet and it didn't work.
Didn't do anything.
You know what I mean?
So it's like, it depends on the person.
Right.
If you're seeing a huge difference and you want to do that, go for it.
Yeah.
Keep it up. That's amazing. I would never tell someone not to do it, but it's like, I just, like you said, that unsolicited advice. And I would say that to any parent, like any new mom, they'll be like, you have 3 kids. Like, what should I do? And I'm like, you just have to do what feels right for you. And that's it.
Yeah.
Cause it's like, I can tell you everything that I did. And like, I mean, I have 3 kids, like they've all been incredibly different. I've had to learn with each child. And so it's like, you really do, you have to take it like one step at a time with each kid and just know that autism or not, like I feel like a mother's intuition is so deep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you have to just like follow that. And if your intuition is telling you, like I should try this diet or I should try this like different supplement or this different, therapy, whatever, go ahead and try it. I tried a ton of it too. It's more so the people that are like pushy about it.
Right.
And they're like, oh, you're not doing that. And you're like, no, I'm not.
No.
Bye. That's it.
Then what is the best thing that people say to you?
Okay, I don't know if somebody necessarily said this to me, but I say it to other people. I don't know. I mean, someone probably said it to me like down the line. So I don't know where I got it.
Was something I said actually?
I say. Well, I did have a really amazing. I didn't know anybody with a child on the spectrum.
Yeah.
The only thing I knew about autism before I had Logan was the movie Rain Man. Like I literally knew nothing.
Yeah.
So I needed an education. My sister had a friend my sister used to live in New York, and she had a friend that lived in New York who her son, he actually is like not even completely diagnosed on the spectrum, but he has a lot of like just what we would call, like atypical behaviors. So she connected me with her, and she was just like a really wonderful guiding light for me. And again, we have very different opinions on a lot of things.
Yeah.
She was actually a guest on my podcast too. And like, but to me, it's like we can have differing opinions, but as long as like we are,
respectful of each other.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's so important with anything.
100%. And like the paths that we take, like they're on their path, we're on ours. I think that's amazing. But I don't know if I got this from her or like I said, this is just something that like I had to realize on my own. But I know like before Logan was diagnosed, I felt like I remember my husband even saying the night before, like he was like, I just feel like tomorrow, like the axe is going to drop. And it was like, we almost had this idea that like we were going to get this diagnosis and all of a sudden we were going to have like a different kid, because now he wasn't just like Logan. He was like Logan that had autism. And what I really had to learn for myself is that like, he is still my baby. He is still that perfect baby that I fell in love with the day he was born. And like Logan is still Logan, and your child, even if they have a diagnosis or not, like that is still your baby. They are still perfect. They are still 100% who they are supposed to be. Maybe they have a label now, but like
we all have labels.
Yeah, exactly. And what you need to just like hold on to is that nothing has changed. That kid that you have is still that kid.
Yeah.
And that's what I always like, because I get a lot of parents now that are like either newly diagnosed or like seeking a diagnosis. And I get it. It's a really scary time for sure. And that's kind of like always what I try to pass on to them is just like, I know it's scary, but like, you just have to remember that like that little face that you're looking at is not going to change. Like nothing is going to be different with your kid. So that, and then I also always like to tell people that like, our version of normal is different than your version of normal. And that's okay because it's normal.
Right.
So it's like, you have to kind of find that normal for you. And
you're like there's no normal, but this is normal.
No, this is normal for us though. Like it's totally normal.
Right. Yeah.
Like before I had Logan, if somebody were telling me that I'd be changing a 6-year-old's diapers, I'd be like, that's weird. You know what I mean? But it's like, now I know like, okay, this is my version of normal. And like, it's different than yours, but there's a lot of other people out there that this is their normal too. So it's
absolutely.
like, you just kind of have to know that like, even though these things feel scary and different, and they are, you're gonna find your path in all of this. And like, I mean, it's a lifetime thing. Autism doesn't go away, but it's like I'm on the other side of it now, where I can look back at it and see like everything's fine.
Right.
It's not perfect. It's not, so it doesn't, tie up with a neat little bow, but like we're living and we're happy and it's fine. So I think that's so important to keep in mind too.
No, absolutely. Someone asked, how can teachers help guide families to help their autistic child?
That's a hard question too. These are hard questions. They're really good questions though. I think that there are, again, like on the spectrum or not, there's some really amazing special needs teachers. There's some really amazing, typical teachers. If it's like in a case where the child already has autism, then I think it should be, you are just doing everything you can to make things like individual for that student. Like kind of how I was saying, like, my son goes to music class. Not every kid did that. And it's like, there's assemblies where like they'll take Logan to that. They don't take every kid to that. So especially when it comes to autism, like obviously like I was saying before, therapy in school is really designed to like make the child a better student. It's not necessarily to like make them, a more functioning person. It's to make them a more functioning student. So you can still focus on the student aspect of things, but it's like you need to keep it individual for each child.
Yeah.
Because it's going to look so different. And it's like, we want to paint in broad strokes in a school, but it's like sometimes we need to make it, we need to just like.
No, I have a problem with that in general.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like every kid learns so differently. And I mean, I got straight A's in school. It wasn't that hard for me, but I know, I'm so amazing.
I did not.
But it wasn't, but like I had people close to me who were like, I cannot math. It just does not make sense to me. So, but there's other things that don't make sense to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so everybody learns. I also that's because I could look at material and go get an A on the test, but then I'd forget it. So if you tested me on it a few months later, I didn't retain any of the information. I was a good okay, I'll look over this quick, memorize it to take the test.
I don't understand people like you. I'm very envious.
No, but now I know nothing of what I learned.
Saying.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't retain tons of the information, but I'm a huge, I really hope that the education system changes because
I think it's in some ways it's getting better, in some ways it's getting worse. But I totally agree with what you're saying because everybody does learn so differently, and we need to. There's a really amazing quote, and it's like we need to, if kids aren't learning the way we're teaching, then we need to change the way that we're teaching, basically. Yeah.
But I moved here from Nevada, and it's the 47th or 48th worst state for education.
Schools are good here, so you got that.
It was.
Yeah. No, the schools. There's a lot of great schools here. Yeah.
Yeah. I moved there, and I just remember my first job. I was working with a couple people that I was like, wait. We would have to leave notes in a computer. I'm like, who wrote this?
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
You're like, I am so much smarter than I realized.
I know. I'm a genius.
Yeah.
Except for someone corrected me on my grammar today.
Oh, no. Are you like, I got straight A's.
I used to be so good at grammar, but autocorrect now, sometimes you're just in a hurry.
I'm horrible at it, so I wouldn't even notice.
Yeah. Now I just feel like I don't care because I never really have to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if I'm wrong,
I don't even
someone
know
will
how
tell
to
me.
type anymore because I do everything on my phone. When I actually sit at a computer, I'm like, home row? I don't know what this is.
I used to be able to. Did you used to have to take those typing tests in
we
class
did those.
for time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm like, I'm not that great.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I was bad then too.
My mom's awesome. She's a fast typer. So if I ever need anything, I'm like,
there you go. Mom,
I know.
Type this up for me.
So this one's kind of long.
Okay.
But this person's a director at a daycare, and she has a child who shows multiple signs of autism, but the parents are very hard to talk to, and never even say hello to her. And do you have any suggestion on how she can nicely approach them and start a conversation, or is that something? I mean, she's not a doctor, so she doesn't want to say anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it can be a very sensitive issue.
Oh, super sensitive.
So, I mean, is there any advice around that?
Yeah, that's definitely, that's hard.
Just send them an anonymous note.
Yeah. Guess what? No, I think that especially if they're not the most receptive even to saying hello.
Yeah.
I would imagine that there's some kind of progress report, even at a daycare that you would send home. Not necessarily a progress report, but an update type of thing. I would try to either get them in person or get them on the phone and have a conversation. And I wouldn't say, I always talk about this, but when when Logan was in preschool, we knew kind of what we were dealing with. He was in a special education preschool at this point. He had been in speech and OT for a long time. And we didn't actually have the diagnosis yet. And nobody around us was like saying that he had autism. Like I said, his therapists were actually telling us, we don't think he has autism.
He's good.
Yeah, exactly. So I went to a parent teacher conference, and it was with his teacher, who was great. And then also the speech therapist wanted to like come in. And he was a guy, which is kind of different for that community as it is. And I didn't really love the way he had connected with Logan. Like I actually had sat in on one of their speech therapy lessons, and like I didn't see him making any kind of connection with him. Like I just felt like he wasn't like jiving with him so well. And I just didn't get the best vibe from him. And he came in and he sat down and he was like, has anyone ever told you they think that Logan has autism? And he said it like just like that. Wow. And it was like I felt like somebody had just like, I felt like I was naked. Like it was like my deepest, darkest secret was just like exposed for the world to see. Because at this point, like I thought this was happening, and so did my husband. We hadn't even said it to each other yet. Like we were both so scared to tell each other, because we were both thinking, I was thinking like, oh my God, Manny is going to be devastated when he finds out that Logan has autism. And he was thinking Megan is going to be devastated when she finds out that Logan has autism. So it was like, in some ways it was good, because it was like the catalyst, at least for him and I, to discuss it. Yeah. And it honestly was like a weight lifted once we had that discussion. But like, I will never forget like just like the frankness that he used with me in that moment, and saying something that was like very heavy and emotional. And it was like the way that he presented it to me was like if, you know, they're like, do you want some water? Like it was like that. Like it was so like casual.
Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't a big deal.
Not even that it wasn't a big deal, but it was just like, it was like it wasn't something that was going to affect me the way that it did. You know what I mean? And it was like, so when I think about that, don't do that. If I was giving,
like, hey,
if I was giving some advice, maybe don't do that. So I think as much as you can, be gentle, but also be honest, and just say, you know, I am concerned with some behaviors I'm seeing, and like your child is doing A, B, and C in the classroom. And what I would try to encourage is for these parents to know that there are resources available. I don't know what state this person is in, but like, again, early intervention goes to age 3. Yeah. And that's most states. And I've talked to people like across the country, actually, even like in the everywhere at this point, like internationally. And like, that is pretty common, that most states have that program until age 3. And then again, once they age out of that, then they're within the district. So it's like a special needs preschool type of situation. Things that are just like much more appropriate for, you know, a child if they really are on the spectrum. Because I can imagine for somebody in a daycare, if they have a child with autism, they probably don't know what to do with that child, because it's, I mean, like it can be really difficult. Yeah. So I would say like be as gentle as possible, but still be honest. And then also let these parents know that there are resources available and there's things to help them, because they honestly might not know. Yeah. I also think too, as hard as it is sometimes, like I was talking this with a friend recently, because she was saying that she thinks that like her nephew may be on the spectrum or something like that. And it was like, and she was like, I'm getting like in all these issues with my brother. And I'm like, you know what? Like at the end of the day, like I understand where you're coming from 100%. It must be so frustrating for you, but like, this is they need to figure this out on their own. Yeah. And it's like, if they're in denial and they don't want to come out of that, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And it's like, if as hard as that is, because it's like the child is one that's suffering here, you can only do so much in a situation though. So it's like, put the information out there, let them know. But then it's like, you also have to know that like, they may not do anything with this, and like, that's okay too. Cause it's not on you. Yeah. Yeah.
If there's someone who thinks that their child is autistic, what is the first step? I know that you said that there's early intervention. Yeah. So would they just Google that to find where that is in their area?
I would go to your pediatrician first, because like for us, we had to get a referral for him to be evaluated by early intervention. And that's just a good way to kind of get started, because there's many different, like, there's so many, everything is such a process, but your pediatrician would probably be the best one. I will also say that pediatricians do not know a lot about autism. Unless you're talking to a specialist, they just don't know. They really don't.
Yeah.
So like there were so many things with Logan that our pediatrician was just not concerned about. And she's like, and granted they see a ton of kids and they probably do see kids with delay that, you know, they, at some point they catch up. But I remember going to her when he was 18 months old and saying, I'm really concerned. Like he's only saying a few words. And she's like, he's not doing like these other things, like there's no big red flags. And she's like, why don't we readdress it when he turns 2 and we can kind of see where he's at. And then it was honestly like 6 weeks later, I made another appointment with her and I went in there like crying and I'm like, I can't let this go. Like this is gnawing at me. We have to do something now. And she was very like perceptive to that. And she's like, okay, let's have him evaluated. And at the time, honestly, like, so they have to have a 30% delay, a 30% delay to even qualify for services. And he was at a 33% delay.
Okay.
So it was very mild.
Right. So it wasn't a huge delay.
No, it wasn't. So it's like, I could see where his pediatrician was like, he's, you know, maybe a little behind, but like he'll catch up. So again, that's where I think like that mother's intuition comes into play. Cause even though it was a mild delay, like I just knew that something was up, that he needed extra help and I needed to be the one to facilitate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think starting with your pediatrician is always a good place. Cause then you can find hopefully early intervention and then kind of go from there, because after that we had a team, like I was saying, and then you kind of have people around you who are familiar with these things, and then it's like you can kind of go from there. Everything is such a long process, and it's different for everyone. Because even like on my podcast, I talk to people that are like, I took my kid to a neuropsych. Like there's so many different ways to even go about it.
Yeah.
And not that anyone is like wrong, but it's just like when you're standing back and looking, you're like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So talking to your pediatrician is never a bad idea. And if you feel like something is up, advocate for your kid.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah. And just like speak up. And if you, like I said, I made that appointment 6 weeks later. I was like, I can't just
I'm not waiting 6 months.
I'm not waiting. And that was like what I felt I needed to do for him. And I went ahead and did it. So it's like things like that. You have to just like, you have to act in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What is the name of your podcast?
My podcast is called Adventures in Autism. And it's like, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. So like iTunes and Spotify, all that good stuff. I'm on Instagram too at Adventures in Autism Pod, or on Facebook at Adventures in Autism Podcast. But yes, hit me up.
Is that Facebook group kind of like a community for?
It's not. I'm scared of Facebook groups.
Same.
I've had a few people be like, we should start a group. Like, I'll moderate it. I'm like, maybe at some point. I have a page where like we can all interact with each other, but it's not like a group.
Yeah.
It's just a page.
I agree that groups can be scary.
They are really, I don't, like, I got a lot going on. I'm like, this is, like, I'm not here to, like, moderate. Especially because as you have heard, there's a lot of, like, hot button topics.
Oh, my gosh.
And we didn't even, like, get into vaccines. Thank God. I don't want to talk about it. But, like,
I never bring that up.
No, I don't either. I don't even like to go there.
I'm currently listening to a podcast on it, because I need more information just for myself.
It's really...
And there's, just things I never talk to with other people.
Totally. No, and like, but that's something that like, I mean, it gets brought up all the time. So like that, the vaccine debate alone, which I know you guys have dealt with that on your page too, or on your group, that alone is enough to like scare me away. I don't like to bring it up either. Cause honestly, like I'm not here to change anyone's opinions, and like, you're not going to change mine. So that's right. Basically.
Well, and I think what you were saying before though, too, it's like people can be like, this is what worked for me or whatever.
Right.
I feel like if people could just have conversations where you're just trying to learn and educate each other.
Be open-minded.
And be open-minded. Be like, you know what? Maybe I don't agree with that. That's not what worked for us. And we're doing things this way. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, I think the whole point is to try to raise good human beings that are going to be loving and accepting, and help educate each other.
Absolutely.
So
that's what my podcast is all about. Cause like when Logan was first diagnosed, even before, I love listening to podcasts, and I was looking for a podcast about autism that was just like real parents who were like in the thick of it, like dealing with the stuff that I was dealing with. And all I found were like really like medicalized, or they were literally like hosted by a doctor, and it was just kind of dry, or the other ones that had guests, like it was just not... Like, I wanted something like this where it's like you're just sitting there talking to someone.
It's like you can study it. And, like that other organization, how you're saying there's not people with autism in it. And so it's like, okay, so you can do all these studies and do all that, but how much interaction, like, you're not around that person every day, day in and day out. And, like, it's so different having a conversation with somebody where this is their life.
Absolutely. That's 100% what it is.
It's not their research.
No.
You know what I mean?
That's what my show is like, I'm just talking with other autism parents about their journey, what's worked for them, what hasn't, what they do every day. And then, like I said, I also have on different, therapists and just like experts in the field. And it's just like all autism.
Yeah.
And I called it Adventures in Autism because it's an adventure every day.
It's an adventure. I have one last question.
Yeah.
Who are you outside of a mom of 3?
Like at this point, like not much.
Not anything.
My sister jokes with me. She's like, "You're not even a human at this point. You're just a mom."
You're a mom.
Yeah. I'm also an esthetician and a makeup artist. So yeah. So I do have a part-time job.
That's nice.
And now I'm a podcaster. So like I definitely have. I need a creative outlet.
Yes.
That's important to me. So if I have like anything to focus on to like be creative, that's something that like recharges my batteries. So I guess I would say that I do. So that's like makeup obviously is my kind of creativity. I love doing the podcast though. I love like making these connections with the listeners and the guests. Like it's honestly been incredible. I wanted it to resonate with people and I wasn't even sure people would listen to it, but it's been really, really amazing to put it together.
Well, I'll leave all that information on the page. And also I'm horrible at makeup. So you can show me some things.
Liz, I'm right down the street.
I know. So I'm the worst.
If you need a makeup artist,
I don't get it. It's just a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. Yeah. It's fun though. I just like products.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me. I really
welcome.
appreciate it. This was so fun.
It was fun.
Okay.
All right. We will see you guys next week. Don't forget to, if you like the podcast, rate it and leave 5 stars. If you don't rate it.
5-star only.
And comment about how
and leave
amazing
really
it is.
Nice reviews only.
And don't forget to sign up for the Patreon. I'm going to be launching that this month. It's online right now. It's going to have birth stories. And then Momtras, it's going to be weekly mantras for moms called Momtras.
Love it.
And then there's going to be a whole sex section.
Oh, my.
Because that's a hot topic. Yeah.
Do you like my commentary on this?
I love it. I need this in my life.
Yes.
And so the Patreon is a subscription base and half of the proceeds go to women in need around the world. And we pick different nonprofits to work with. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So don't forget that. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye. This podcast is brought to you by Wave Podcast Network. Check out all of our shows, including the Brain Candy Podcast, I Don't Get It, Babes and Babies, Coffee Convos, and Let's Talk About It.